Andrew Cretella is my guest today, and we are discussing the value of taking voice acting classes, important home studio setup considerations, and how he plans to make voiceover a self-sustaining career. I hope you enjoy the episode. Tell me who you are and how you got involved in voice acting.
My name is Andrew Cretella. I used to be an elementary school teacher. That was my first career. It's a very challenging career. A lot of teachers burn out, and that is kind of what happened to me. It's at this point a job that I would not go back to in a full-time capacity. I still do technically work at the same school district that I've worked at back when I used to teach full-time. It was about 4 years ago that I basically decided that I was done with teaching full-time, but I still had to pay the bills, of course. So I transitioned into substitute teaching. Not as much of a commitment as teaching full-time, so it still gave me, more time and energy after hours to do something else. When I found myself in that position of thinking like, all right, well, if I'm not going to be a teacher anymore, what am I going to do next? And I've spent much of my life playing video games. I've been playing video games since I was 5 years old. I still remember it. And of course, that's before video games were even regularly voice acted. And for the past 34 years now, there hasn't been a single year where I've not played video games. I would say there probably hasn't even been like a single month where I haven't played video games. Throughout my adult life, I was also very frequently told that I have such a nice voice, which I'm sure a lot of people who've gotten into voice acting have. And then, of course, once you get into voice acting, especially once you start taking classes, you get told like, oh yeah, you do have a great voice. But that's not going to be enough to make it as a voice actor. Of course, I started taking classes, and it is very much my belief that it is incredibly important to take classes, basically when you're learning to act. Simply, once you make the decision, I'm going to act, basically at that point, you're pretty much committed to taking classes for like the rest of your life, unless you actually get to the point where, you make it big in a movie and you're set for life. And even then, I'm not sure. But otherwise, yeah. So I've taken classes. I first started taking classes at a place online called Closing Credits, which was great for starting out. After about a year, I found a place called Voiceover Camp, which felt like a step up. I got into these rooms now, virtual rooms, Zoom rooms, where I felt like the people around me were so much better. Often they had agents. And in fact, the very first class that I took through Voiceover Camp, I was in a class with Sean Chiplock and Lauren Mayfield. So I'm in a class with them. They're not the ones teaching the class. I'm just in the class with them. And Voiceover Camp has been a crucial part of my development as a voice actor. I still take classes there, although their offerings have been a little more sporadic lately, and I'm part of that community. And then even more lately, I've relied a lot on Real Voice LA and the classes there. So I'm in San Diego, which is about 2.5 hours from LA. Very recently, I've really expanded my horizons through the idea of direct marketing, where now I'm just looking for companies that might be doing voiceover and just sending emails directly to them. That's very, very recent, but it's something that has very much expanded my horizons and will hopefully change my career moving forward. I've been voice acting for about 4 years now, and I've had some nice things happen in terms of the things that I've booked, as well as I've gotten some good feedback from coaches. But one thing that has definitely not happened yet is I've definitely not gotten anywhere near a full-time income as a voice actor. This year, I kind of made a general decision to really try to push to the next level of my career, because last year I had gotten feedback from coaches that I'm ready to make demos, so that I made demos with those coaches. And then I started submitting demos to agents, ended up getting 2 agents so far and still looking for more. And I was really just trying to push myself to figure out, how can I start pushing toward that full-time income? How can I really start treating this like a business? The narrative often goes around that it is very difficult to make a full-time income out of this, especially when you're starting out, and especially for a lot of people who work more in the character spaces. And yet there are definitely people who do it. One of the ways that I've been hearing that is supposedly more consistent and supposedly more reliable is to direct market and actually to focus on non-character work, commercials, e-learning, corporate narration, explainers, things like that, where work is more consistent, more repeatable, rather than trying to sort through hundreds of voices to find the right fit for that character. A lot of times they're just looking for someone fast, reliable, professional, who can just do the job and be trustworthy. So I'm trying to tap more into that.
What are some of those essentials for a home studio?
It's often said that the treatment is more important than the mic itself. I made my booth back in, I think, 2022. I went a little overboard. I was a little bit of a perfectionist. The ideal case when you're starting out, in my opinion, is if you already have a walk-in closet, because you basically already have an ideal room to set up. And then from there, it's kind of just covering as much of the hard surfaces of the closet with soft material. When I say soft material, for me, you can kind of see my foam here, about 95 square feet of these things. I've also got bass traps, and those are, again, probably a little overkill for starting out. I was willing to spend the money. I mean, I think if you're on more of a budget, just find whatever soft material you can. And I think really the ideal case is not just having a walk-in closet, but having a walk-in closet and then not taking the clothes out, assuming you still have space to set up a computer and then be in there. And then after you not take the clothes out, you look at whatever parts of the room are remaining that are still hard and not covered with soft material, which probably the ceiling if we're thinking of like a walk-in closet. But I saw a friend's walk-in closet recently, and he did have like some lower spaces that could also be covered with soft material. I've kind of come to learn that there are very specific microphones that are kind of known as like the entry-level ones. So the Audio-Technica AT2020, which I had to start out. Now I have the Rode NT1, and those are like $100 and $200 respectively. So those are like some of the go-to entry-level mics that are like just good enough that you can have that and like realistically book voiceover work without it being a problem, probably. And then, of course, the Scarlett 2i2, which is, widely considered not necessarily the best interface, but they just had a very, very good marketing campaign. And the red color is really attractive, and I think for that reason it just ended up being probably the most known audio interface for people who are getting into voice acting. That is what I'm running as well. I use Reaper. Like many people, I started out with Audacity, and then I took an audio engineering course through Closing Credits, where they were working with Reaper, and I kind of just adopted it as part of what was used for the course. And I've come to really like it. It's a bit more flexible than Audacity. One of the things that my instructor at the time taught me was that Audacity is a destructive editor. So it's like once you start making changes, they're basically kind of permanent, and if you make too many, it's hard to get back to your original state. Whereas Reaper's a little bit more flexible, and it's very easy to undo whatever you have, or even if you have like multiple effects, you can like toggle individual ones on or off. The truth is, though, most of the time, I just record raw. Record raw, send raw, and for the most part, that's it. Especially just when sending auditions for character-related work. For some of the work that I do want to do more of, but haven't done as much of yet, especially e-learning, that is the kind of thing where I probably would have to do some of my own engineering. And luckily, from those audio engineering classes that I had mentioned, I basically just have a saved effects chain that I can just apply whenever I need it. That takes me like less than 30 seconds to actually apply, and that's basically all I need to do for the most part. But that did also come with taking a class that kind of front-loaded that experience for me.
What are some other things that you've learned from all the classes that you've taken?
When you take a class, the instructor will push you to do things that you're not normally comfortable doing, but can do, or things that you didn't know you can do, but can do. I was in a class recently with Cretella, who is the director or casting director or both of Genshin Impact and Neverness to Everness. And I chose a script that I liked based on the words of the script. I did it in a way that, I was kind of comfortable with. Chris told me, yeah, that was great. But if we take a look at the artwork, this is a character who looks kind of like a demon or like a bit of like a skull or revenant kind of thing. And so I want it to be more like kind of like a creature read, dirty up the voice, make it basically like a monster. I normally kind of think to myself, nah, I'm not really a monster person, creature person. That's not my kind of stuff. But in that moment, that's what I was directed to do. And I did it and did actually pretty well.
Is there any other characters or projects that you can think of that challenged you in that way?
Just about any time that I book a video game, I usually find myself end up being quite challenged. And I have kind of multiple examples of that. Unlike many people, I love to just do my own voice when I'm doing characters. I'd love it if I can just do my own voice, but sometimes as part of doing a video game, they ask for more than just one voice. I was doing a video game where I was the main character. For one of the upcoming sessions, they say, and we want you to do some NPCs. I look at the script, and what I see is police and 4 lines. And I'm like, all right, so I just need to think of one voice that's different from the main character. And then when I'm in the session, they tell me, actually, we want it to be 4 different police officers. I'm like, who do you think I am? I do not have that range. That just comes up a lot, challenges like that.
What are your short and long-term goals with voice acting?
I kind of mentioned how this year is the year that I'm really trying to go to the next level, trying to push towards that full-time income. So the next 6 months, a lot of that's going to be reaching out to hundreds of potential clients, finding companies that produce video content, cold emailing them and pitching myself as a voice actor, and specifically focusing on non-character genres. E-learning, commercials, explainer videos, might even try medical narration at some point. Really trying to see if I can build my own client base and develop repeatable work. I'm going to be pitching to more agents too. Right now I have a San Diego agent and a NorCal agent. So I want to start thinking about, Chicago, Texas, Florida. I found an agent in Oregon, Cincinnati. Really trying to find these places that, a lot of people don't even think about or ignore because, they're chasing the Los Angeles or New York agent. And I've learned that it is definitely much easier to get picked up by a regional agent than a Los Angeles agent, much easier.
What's the value in having agents regionally?
Last year, I took a class that was about basically, the business of voice acting and trying to help move forward. And my instructor at the time was talking to us about her agents and, kind of just mentioning them casually while she's talking about agents. And I started keeping track of how many agents that she had. And then at some point I asked her outright, how many agents do you have? So far I've counted 4. And then her answer was 7. This year I coached with someone else who is someone who I know through voiceover camp who very recently got rep by Atlas Talent. So, of course, big achievement there. And I also asked her, how many agents do you have? And her answer was 11. She's based in New Zealand, and so she's got agents in all sorts of different places. We're at a point where with remote voice acting also, you don't need to be in a particular region to have representation there. Most markets, if not all markets outside of Los Angeles and New York, are not going to be as competitive. There are just not as many people applying to those agencies, not as many people want to apply to those agencies, and it's, not that they're bad, but just because it's a less competitive market where there's potentially less going on or where, the work's not as prestigious, it's just an easier way to get in. Once you have an agent, they send you auditions. Kind of the idea is, getting more auditions from more sources, and that a regional agent might have auditions for jobs that are only in their region. There might be something in Cincinnati that it's a Cincinnati job and a Los Angeles agent is not going to have it.
What's your advice for people who are in the voice acting industry?
Take classes. Take classes, especially starting out. My honest, strong opinion is that I actually think it is not possible to be competitive at the top levels of the character space if you are not taking classes. If you want to get to a point where you can be in AAA video games or be in animation that actually plays on things like Netflix or whatever, I actually think that it's not even possible to break into those levels without training. Because it's hard enough to break into those levels with training. Once you start training, you realize just how many levels there are. You can be at a point where you're it's starting to feel pretty good, but once you start working with a professional who's pushing you to do things, your weaknesses and your gaps start to be kind of exposed and just realize how much further there is to go.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you.